There is a type of manager, and you may have worked for one. He's the kind who seems to notice every mistake you make, and nothing you do is right in their sight. The one who gives your best project to someone less qualified, who forgets to include you in the meeting where your future was decided, who responds to your most significant work with silence, and to your smallest error with baseless documentation. You've probably told yourself this person is incompetent or distracted, or simply doesn't give two shits. But what if they do? What if this person sees you more clearly than almost anyone else in the building? And what if that is exactly the problem? This is one of the most psychologically complex and least discussed dynamics in any workplace, because it doesn't look like what it is. It doesn't look like threat suppression. It doesn't look like calculated sabotage. It doesn't even look like a decision. It looks like you're completely being ignored. And because it looks like being ignored, most people respond to it the same way. They work harder, they try to be more visible, they take on more projects, they send better creative emails, and nothing changes because they are solving the wrong problem. The organizational research on this, like who it happens to, why it happens, and who does it, is some of the most validating and disturbing reading in workplace psychology. And honestly, here is the finding that most people never encounter. The employees most likely to be subtly sidelined, excluded from key decisions, and quietly held back are not the weakest performers on the team. They are the strongest ones. In organizational psychology, there is a documented pattern called threat assessment behavior. It describes what happens inside a leader's head when someone on their team begins to outperform them, draw attention they believe belongs to them, or demonstrate a capability that reveals a gap. The researcher who mapped this most extensively is Robert Hogan. Hogan spent decades studying what he called the dark side of leadership, the personality patterns that don't appear in job interviews, but quietly determine what happens to the people working beneath them. His work covered over 400 organizations across multiple industries. His conclusion was this: the most dangerous leaders in any organization are not the ones who seem incompetent. They're the ones who seem completely fine. They hit their numbers, they manage upward effectively, they present confidently in executive meetings. On paper, they look like exactly the kind of manager you'd want. But beneath that surface of decisions about who gets assigned to which projects, in the conversations that happen without you, in the relationship between your work and your manager's reputation, a very different pattern is operating. The high performer gets routed toward work with no senior visibility. The successful project gets attributed to team effort in the manager's update to leadership. The strong peer relationship with someone 3 levels up gets discouraged. None of this is documented. None of it appears in the meeting record. None of it can be cleanly proven from the outside, but the person on the receiving end knows exactly what it feels like. They just haven't had a name for it. The mechanism behind this behavior is not malice. That is the thing that makes it so difficult to identify clearly. It's psychology. Specifically, it's what researchers call narcissistic threat response, the automatic, often entirely unconscious reaction that a person with deeply insecure personality traits has when they perceive their status being challenged. Most people think of narcissism as arrogance, but clinical narcissism is fundamentally about fragility. The narcissistic manager needs to be the most visible, the most praised, the most indispensable person in the room. Not because they are certain they are, but because somewhere beneath the performance of confidence, they are terrified they're not. And when someone on their team begins producing work that is noticeably excellent or begins getting mentioned in rooms the manager isn't in, the threat response activates. Researcher Seth Spain described what follows as the suppression cycle. The manager does not fire the high performer. Firing would draw attention to their own inadequacy. It would create questions. Instead, they manage them sideways. They keep the high performer occupied with work that generates no organizational visibility. They decline to advocate for them in the conversations that determine advancement. This is done so that eventually the high performer concludes that the environment simply isn't working for them. Then they resign on their own. The manager loses no one they wanted to keep. The organization loses someone it could not afford to lose. And the high performer walks away believing they made a choice, when the architecture of that choice was built around them, carefully, over months. In 2020, a study published in the Journal of Applied Psychology examined employees working under supervisors with narcissistic personality traits. The findings were specific. Employees with narcissistic supervisors reported significantly higher rates of what the researchers called active undermining, not passive neglect, active undermining. This included deliberate withholding of career-advancing information, social exclusion from key internal discussions, and systematic credit redistribution, where the employees' individual contributions were absorbed into collective team narratives in senior communications. And the employees most targeted were the ones rated highest by their peers and by objective performance measures, the very best ones, because the best ones represent the greatest threat to a manager whose personality traits require them to be the most capable person in the room. So this is not a coincidence that you happen to be experiencing. This is a documented, named, researched psychological mechanism, and it is running right now inside organizations across every industry in the world. You should also know that not every difficult manager is running a suppression cycle. Some managers are just incompetent, some are overwhelmed, some simply don't invest in the people beneath them. But there are specific patterns that separate general managerial dysfunction from targeted threat response behavior. The work you're assigned consistently lacks senior exposure. Your direct relationship with leadership above your manager is subtly managed rather than facilitated. Your wins are attributed to the team in presentations, while your mistakes are attributed to you individually. And the most consistent signal of all, the colleague who challenges your manager least, who makes the manager look best, who never outshines them, gets the most access, the most visibility, the most opportunity. When that pattern is consistent across time and across context, you are not being overlooked. You are being managed. Understanding this does not fix the situation immediately, but it does something more important first. It removes the self-blame. Because the question most people in this position keep asking has a different answer than they expected. In work environments where you're experiencing this, you're basically at the mercy of specific people. So stop blaming yourself because you are not being held back despite your performance. You are being held back because of it. And knowing that changes everything about how you decide to respond. Whether you choose to navigate the dynamic, document it, escalate it, or walk through a different door entirely. That decision is made with clarity now. In my next video, we'll go deeper into exactly what you can do when you recognize this pattern, and why most people's first instinct about how to handle it makes things significantly worse. Please subscribe and turn on notifications if you enjoyed this video, because every time you like, comment, or share my video, it helps me understand what questions you're wrestling with and where we should go deeper. I'll see you in the next one.